Every style of game has their icon. The single game that, no pun intended, changed the game forever within the constraints of their genre. Real-time strategy games have Age of Empires with its micromanaging over resources and its epic scale, while third-person shooters have Gears of War with its intuitive cover system. But every now and then, we get a game that, quite frankly, uproots the current standard for not just their specific category, but the industry as a whole. When the original Super Mario Bros. Launched in the early 80s, it showed the world what a game could be, effectively putting Nintendo on the map, and creating the basic format most 2D platformers follow to this very day. Oh, and it also helped combat the video game crash in the early 80s. Get E.T. out of there! But for my money, there is only one classic that I can wholeheartedly praise for laying the groundwork for many of my favorite video games. One of, if not the most influential first-person shooters ever released. It should be obvious by now, but I'm talking about Doom. And not just the first game either, but the second, and the often underappreciated third entry too. Over the last year, I've taken up the wonderfully gory task of looking back at almost everything classic Doom related, from its humble beginnings all the way to its wonderfully talented modding community. So strap in folks, and enjoy this compiled look back at classic Doom. Oh, also if you've been a fan of the channel, stick around till the end, I've got a new segment for you. More specifically, we're playing the original Doom game that came out in December of 1993. Well, kind of. So, we are still playing that original version, but we're playing a more modernized port of it available on Xbox Game Pass. It's essentially one of those source ports on PC, only officially endorsed by Bethesda. Now, I'm sure I'll get some pushback on this choice because the ports, while faithful to the original, do add on a few extra features, the most notable being the addition of a crosshair on the screen at all times. And sure, I'll admit, I'm not a complete dumbass when it comes to technology, just a regular one. So yeah, I could have loaded up DOSBox and emulated the original version of the game, but this is simply more efficient for me, and honestly, I don't find the changes to be all that intrusive. With all that being said, let's rip and tear. Oh wait, that saying didn't really catch on until the 2016 reboot? Okay, I guess I'll save that transition for the video. Doom does not give a flying F-word about its storytelling. Okay, that's not entirely true. The manual included with the original release of the game fills in the background information for us, because hoo boy, let me tell you, the actual game doesn't let you know anything about the storyline. Everything you need to know in order to progress is that we are soldiers on Mars, demons have broken through and are killing everyone. Go blast them. Nothing more, nothing less. But for the interested, the manual reveals that the character we're playing as, nicknamed Doom Guy by the community, was only on Mars because 3 years prior, he disobeyed a superior officer when he commanded him to murder unarmed civilians. And from the way it's worded, it seems like we messed this guy up. Holy shit! Bet you that officer looked like that one fish from SpongeBob afterwards. Aside from that, the typical Doom affairs occur. The Union Aerospace Corporation, or UAC, a massive conglomerate, was looking into teleportation technology on Mars. And despite testing revealing the method to be highly unstable, the UAC continued with it anyway, unintentionally opening the gates of hell to the mortal world. Pretty simplistic as game stories go, especially in modern day. But when you think of it from the mindset of a gamer in 1993, it's more than serviceable. I mean, aside from an RPG here or there, stories in video games were sorta, well, kinda exactly like how John Carmack said. You think if we showed John Carmack any Telltale game, he'd have a stroke? While we're on that topic, John Carmack has actually come out somewhat recently to backpedal on that comment. Did he need to do that? Not really. Video games as an industry has changed quite drastically since the 1990s, and I'd hope anyone in the current year would understand that. Looking back at it, I'm not really positive about the time I first heard about the Doom series. I was born in 2002, and to say that the original games were a bit before my time would be a slight understatement. I mean, I really didn't know what a floppy disk was until I saw Pro Jared talk about some edutainment game he played as a child.
One of these bad boys.
So, yeah. If you showed me a floppy dangle, I'd probably call the cops.
Right!
Though, I do think the internet was my first exposure to the Doom series. Exactly how, I unfortunately don't remember, but I do remember that the very first time I ever played the original Doom games were on the version on the Xbox 360's digital store. The demo, anyway. Listen, when you're in a poor family and only get video games on your birthday and Christmas, you learn to appreciate demos. But I absolutely loved what I played. The demon designs, the way the weapons felt, was all so lovably retro. I really wanted to actually buy the games and play them fully, but that never happened. Yeah, one day after saving up my money, my uncle took me up to the GameStop, and I came up with 2 games, Doom 3 BFG Edition and Battlefield 3. Take a guess which one I ended up buying. Yeah, I didn't know this at the time, but Doom 3 has a reputation for being the worst game of the series, and I'll get into my own thoughts on that matter another time. All you need to know is that the GameStop guy told me I shouldn't get it. I didn't, and now I regret it. And that unfortunate event has led us to the modern day. I bought Doom 2016 on the Xbox One, thought it was okay. Then I played Doom Eternal, and absolutely fucking loved it, and now we're taking a look back at the series beginning. Let's be real here, folks. We all know why we play Doom. Is it to appreciate the technological advancements id Software made with their highly advanced, for the time anyway, engine? Well, yes, actually. In fact, I found myself really impressed with the way this game made use of lighting. In some odd way, I think I actually enjoyed the way it was handled here, as opposed to Doom 3. Although, you can't deny it, Doom 3, even to this day, has a great lighting engine. Too bad that's like the only part of the game I actually liked, but I digress. Certainly don't have that issue here. Anyway, we're all here to do one thing. Kill demons! The basic gameplay loop in Doom is very simple. You run around maze-like levels, searching for blue, red, and yellow keycards to open up doors and proceed to the level's exit. All the while filling anything that moves with holes. When playing the game again for this video, it actually surprised me how few demons you actually encounter in this game. For starters, you have your typical weak early level cannon fodder, zombie soldiers. These guys trot around the levels wielding rifles, which for some reason use the same sound effect as our pistol. But the sprite definitely doesn't show one. Not that it matters, of course, I just found it pretty funny. Then, the slightly beefier version of this guy is a zombie soldier with a shotgun. And since it's a shotgun, you know what happens when you get too close to them. What? Although these dudes are by far the weakest enemies in the game. They honestly don't put up much of a fight and can be easily taken out with a single shotgun blast or a couple bursts from your pistol. Next up are the imps. These tall, lanky-looking demons are, by my estimations anyway, one of the 2 most commonly encountered enemies. In terms of health, they aren't too much higher than that of a zombie marine. Anything above a shotgun blast will put them on the ground easily enough. But these guys love to throw around these flaming projectiles, which, if they actually manage to land a hit, are pretty damaging. You can still get away with acting carelessly around them, but if you slip up, it might end up costing you. Speaking of which, the second most encountered enemy in Doom 1 is hands down the Pinky. Somewhere during the second episode of the game, The Shores of Hell, they start spamming these things. Unlike the other foes so far though, the Pinkies can tank a sizable amount of damage and can output even more. Thankfully, their attack pattern is limited to charging the player, so as long as you're paying attention, you'll be fine. My go-to method of taking them out are the chain gun, which actually causes them to stagger between frames. Or the chainsaw. I mean, you might as well use the damn thing on the Pinkies. They run right up to you. They're pretty much asking for it. Oh, there's also an invisible variant of the Pinky called a Spectre. I mean, they're quite literally just the Pinky again, only that they're using the elite camouflage from Halo 2. If you're playing the more modern releases, hover your reticle over them, and once it lights up red, you're good to go. In essence, chain gun go burn. Fuck these motherfucking things! Oh, words cannot properly describe how much I dislike the Lost Souls, what you see is what you get with these guys. They're just flying, flaming skulls who rush towards you, and, I don't know, they bite you. These things just aren't fun, plain and simple. With every other monster in the game, you get a pretty satisfying death animation. Lost Souls? I understand that that was a very tired and boring joke, however, it's fitting given these lame enemies. In a 3D setting, they can actually work pretty well because you have full vertical control. However, in the classic Doom games where you can't look up or down, they just become tiring. Doesn't help that the game sometimes spams you with these things. Yeah, I don't like them. Fight me. On a more positive note, the next demon we have on our list here is the Kako demon. Now this is how you do a flying enemy right. Instead of blindly charging the player in packs of 2 or 3, the Kako demon is a slow, tanky enemy who fires hard-hitting projectiles at the player. I recommend using the plasma gun. It absolutely shreds these dudes to pieces. Aside from the gameplay, can we just take a moment to appreciate these guys? Their design is so iconic that I'm willing to bet it's the first thing that come to most of our minds when Doom is mentioned. And no, I don't care that it is essentially stolen from D&D. It still looks great. These tall, towering monstrosities right here are called the Barons of Hell. And to call them the most threatening minions of hell in all of Doom 1 is a massive understatement. I mean, these dudes are so threatening to an unprepared player that 2 of them serve as bosses for the knee-deep in the dead chapter of the game. In listing the roster of demons in the very first Doom game, we've discovered that the variety in the monster's attacks aren't all too significant. They're either projectile-based or melee-based. And the ones who tend to prioritize flaming balls of destruction tend to be the most threatening amongst his contemporaries. This is proven even further with the Baron making use of balls.
That shit stank, don't it?
Don't let these things hit you, because I did. And, yeah, I had to repeat this level way more times than I'm comfortable with admitting. Oh, are you waiting for me to go over the next demons? Because we're done. That's it. There are no more. Okay, that's not actually true because there are 2 unique boss enemies in the games for episode 2 and 3, but in terms of common fodder, that's it. There's only 7 of them. Now listen, in a vacuum here, there is absolutely nothing wrong with this. In fact, the lineup of demons is pretty solid and the gameplay is well balanced. At least in the terms of combat, but I'll reserve my nitpicks for the level design for another time. There were a few moments where it was a bit too difficult or too easy, but with enough perseverance, you'll be able to overcome most challenges that await you. Unless you die. If you're like me and don't quickly save all that often, you'll be forced to start all over again at the beginning of the stage with only a handgun! The prospect of going through some of these encounters with only the starting weapons scares me so much that I went into the options and cheated to get all my weapons back. Is this cowardly? Yes, but I never claimed that I wasn't a bitch. But learning that some of Doom's notable creatures actually stemmed from the sequel was really surprising to my uncultured self. And if you thought I enjoyed the lineup of baddies in Doom, you haven't seen anything yet. I am in love with the weapons of this game. Chances are if you've played the game, you are too. There is something so appealing about the pixelated images which makes up our arsenal. This goes for all the guns, by the way. They are all very nice looking and fit the atmosphere the game drops you into. Okay, but the plasma gun kinda just looks like a box, and the RPG kinda looks like a cock. There's nothing more satisfying than pumping a slug into a demon's face with a shotgun. Not quite as good as another close-range weapon, but that's a topic we won't get into until we reach Doom 2. Both the chain gun and plasma rifle are excellent for crowd control and or cleaning a room in general. Especially the plasma gun, man, that thing, pardon my French, kicks so much ass it's not even funny. Like, there have been times I felt like I was doing more damage with the plasma gun as opposed to the RPG or even the big fucking gun itself. Speaking of the RPG, I didn't really use it during my playthrough, with the exception of boss battles. The reason being... I'm a dumbass. The only weapon in our arsenal I happen to feel mixed about is the chainsaw. Now, let's get the obvious out of the way. Using a chainsaw to mulch through a demon's organs is metal as all hell. put that sentence on a shirt and I'd wear it to middle school. But the uses for it are rather situational. Most demons make use of ranged attacks, be them bullets or the aforementioned balls. By the time you've closed the gap to cut the opponent in half, you'll undoubtedly take more damage than if you just pulled the trigger. There are two exceptions though. The Pinky Demon and the fucking Skulls. Aside from fighting these two specific monsters, I would rather just shoot them. That's enough about the action. How about we talk about the setting for this game? That being, of course, the UAC's Mars base and Hell. Yep, you go to Hell. I know we've all been desensitized to the nonsensical badassery of the Doomslayer and, by proxy, the Doom Men. But I still love the fact that after fighting his way through the Deimos moon base, the Doom guy realizes that the only way out is through Hell itself, and he just dives in. You know, just to prove that he can. The aesthetics of the Mars research base are fantastic. The deep shadows, cold metallic walls smeared with blood, the bodies of fellow staff members occasionally strewn about the floor. The lights have gone out in certain areas where you'd be lucky to see so much as a flicker. And even whilst wandering these darkened corridors, you can still hear the disturbing cries of monstrosities all around you. Good thing this is an FPS game. The atmosphere that encompasses these maps is fantastic. I mean, obviously, it's a computer game from the early 90s, so there isn't anything that's gonna make you jump out of your seat in terror. But let me tell you, there is some creepy-ass imagery here. Like this wall of moving human faces. Yeah, this is scarier than anything I encountered in Doom 3. I really can't tell you why I feel this, but just look at it! Oh, and all these compliments go triple for Hell. This moment right here in the game's third episode made me sit and gawk for a couple moments. And nearly got me motion sick. I'm not sure if it's just me here, but something about the background scrolling really bothers me. Thankfully, most of the levels in Hell take place in dilapidated structures or deep cavern systems. Oh, and remember a few seconds back when I mentioned that the Mars levels make use of cold, metallic wall textures? Yeah, you do. Good. Down in Hell, they use literal moving columns of human flesh. You know, speaking of a stretch, it's a shame that I really enjoyed the level design a lot less. Now look, I'll be straight with you guys. What I'm about to say may be controversial, and is no doubt an opinion I've only developed since I have the gaming skills of a B-tier DSP.
Why am I toxic?
But after the first episode of the game, I really didn't enjoy myself. Discovering secrets and finding the correct path through these mazes was mostly unsatisfying. Not all the time, of course. Accidentally discovering a secret while sprinting around the map is actually a very welcome surprise, when it's not a trap that squishes me to death. Although I do have to add that I cannot determine a logical sense of progression for these secrets. Some of them I just don't know. Like, unless you read about these things online, I don't understand how the devs expected us to figure these out. It kinda reminds me about id's previous FPS game, Wolfenstein, where you'd have to grind up on each wall hoping to God that one of them was actually a secret door. Despite my constant bitching about this aspect of the game, I can't really list this as a fault. Sure, I don't enjoy it in the slightest, I hate maze design, but many of my peers praise this element, implying that it adds heaps of replay value to the package. And while I don't agree with that statement, I mean, I've replayed the game a handful of times with my only motivation being that I like how it feels to shoot demons in the face. This type of level design was a product of the technology and norms of the genre at this time. I mean, my favorite retro-ish shooter franchise, Serious Sam, is proof of this, with all the secrets hidden in each entry. So, in short, I don't like the level design, however, I can't fault the game for it. Thus, we're gonna chalk this up to different tastes in games. There is simply no way to properly convey the effect this game had on the industry as a whole. It practically created the first-person genre as we know it. And quite honestly, that's a massive achievement. Even if you don't play shooters all too often, you know damn well how appealing it is to a large majority of gamers out there. Take one look at the mountains of money a series such as Call of Duty makes, and there really isn't any other way around it. Doom helped spearhead the gaming industry as a whole, and its effects can still be felt to this very day with the series going on strong. Not to mention the simple fact that this game still holds up to this day. Like every milestone video game, it isn't perfect. But without a shadow of a doubt, I can safely say that Doom is still a classic game. One that every fan of the first-person shooter genre should give a try.
Hey, editing Justin here, and I just wanted to warn you guys ahead of time that, my audio mixing was very bad in this part. It's bad in general, it was worse here. Sometimes the music overpowers what I say, and I've tried my best to mediate it, but it's just still kind of hard to hear. Hopefully you guys can put up with it. Thank you. I'm an idiot. Doom was kind of a big deal when it released in 1993. Truly a landmark title in a number of ways. Many people who were children in the 90s consider it to be their first experience with 3D gaming. Sure, that claim isn't completely true, as the id Tech engine was only able to create a 2.5D perspective, turning 2D map data into a 3D space. Not gonna lie, I'm kinda stupid, I don't really know exactly how it works, but I wouldn't blame anyone for thinking like this. Because, I mean, that looks 3D to me. Aside from the flat sprites, of course. Speaking of which, Doom had a level of gore which was totally unseen at the time of release. Anything you shot would crumple into a bloody mound of writhing flesh. The guns were so satisfying to fire, the animation, all of it was top-notch. While first-person shooters did exist beforehand, this, alongside Wolfenstein 3D, helped pave the way for the first-person shooter genre as a whole. Half-Life, Halo, Call of Duty, and really any successful FPS title owe a lot to this game. But with such a landmark title, one that sold over 1.5 million copies not even a year after its initial release, a sequel was practically guaranteed. Though that was a daunting task in and of itself. How does one build on the fundamentals from the original Doom, and add enough new content to make the second game stand on its own? id Software did it in 10 months. Taking on the classic strategy of, if it ain't broke, id Software went right to work on the sequel.
Hey, just working hard so I can please you.
Taking advantage of the rapidly advancing technology of the time. Thanks to this, the programmers were able to make Doom 2 the ultimate demon-killing experience. More open-ended levels, a multitude of new enemies, and a previously unseen weapon to use on the undead horde. That might sound like a point against the game, but trust me, it's practically the best gun in the entire sandbox. However, even around the time of Doom 2's release, it received its fair share of criticism. Many felt that the final product failed to add enough value to justify the purchase, seeing it as nothing more than a glorified expansion pack for the original game. And in their defense, the first game did come out not even a year before. As a matter of fact, the first entry was still selling new copies right up until the launch of Doom 2. Yet, even with all these factors at play, Doom 2 sold over 2.9 million copies between 1994 and 1999. So evidently, the team at id Software had to be doing something right. Was Doom 2 truly the generational masterpiece that the fanbase claims it to be? Or is it instead a lazy DLC with a retail price tag slapped onto it? That's the question I aim to answer with today's review. And despite me now being able to use GZ Doom to play the game, I'm instead going to be using the official re-release developed by Nerve Software. It's a very accurate and uncompromised version of Doom 2, with a few additional features such as an on-screen crosshair added. While I actually enjoy it quite a bit, I decided to turn it off for this video to maintain some form of authenticity. I hope you're happy, random commenter! Without any further ado, let's get this shit started. I'm just gonna go ahead and replay a clip from the first video.
Doom does not give a flying F-word about its storytelling.
Yet again, it's not entirely true, especially so with the game's sequel. But it would be a massive stretch if anyone claimed that Doom 2's storyline was front and center. Once again, unless you take a peek at the included manual, the only time you'll be reminded of the plot will be the occasional text scroll spread throughout the campaign. After the events of the first game, the Doom guy claws his way out from the pits of hell, only to realize that the portal on Mars was far from the only demonic breach. Earth has been invaded, civilization is on the brink of collapse, and the few world leaders who remain are trying to flee the planet. Unfortunately, the demonic horde, or as the in-game text screen claims, aliens.
What?
Seriously, can anyone tell me why the hell monsters are called aliens here? Is it like trying to imply that instead of hell being the realm referred to in the Bible and various other real-world religions, it's actually just an odd dimension and has no tangential ties to any religion? Because if so, that's great foresight. Can't believe they already knew Doom Eternal was gonna happen.
I'm VTuber Samuel Hayden. Aww.
Has put up massive fortifications around the spaceport, which is the only one with spacecraft capable of saving the last of humanity. And our lone hero joins the assault to free the spaceport and evacuate the surviving humans. Not because he wants to protect and secure the future of his entire race. No. It's because those fucking demons killed our damn rabbit! Her name was Daisy, by the way, and she shall be avenged. After this, the game proper takes place. The Doom Marine is once again thrown up against the forces of hell, alone and with an absolutely goated armory at his disposal. He rampages through the spaceport, clearing the way for the last ships of human survivors to escape. And in an oddly somber moment, it's described that the Doom guy sits in quiet contemplation, waiting for death after he knows that he has saved humanity. But then immediately after, the remaining humans discover the source of the demonic invasion and force him back into the fray. It's a portal within the confines of his hometown. He marches over, obliterates everything in his path, jumps into the portal. Once again, Doom men are built differently. Murders a giant skull thing called the Icon of Sin, and while still in hell, closes the portal to Earth, trapping himself in hell in order to put a stop to the chaos. It's just enough substance to justify the puzzle-solving, monster-blasting extravaganza that is Doom 2. But as I stated prior, I am more partial to the way this game handled its plot as opposed to its predecessor. Hell breaching through the fabric of reality in order to bring death and destruction onto Earth. It's apocalyptic, calling forth imagery of the devastation spoken of in the Book of Revelations, and I find it much more intriguing than typical science has gone too far plotlines. Not that I dislike that angle, it certainly worked well with Half-Life.
Hey, buddy.
But I find that Doom 2 does just a bit more with the story in-game that makes my narrative-driven heart flutter. Why do they call the demons aliens in that text scroll? id Software did not change much, if anything, when it came to the basic gameplay loop of Doom 2. When whittling down the experience to its most basic components, you're still wandering through maze-like levels, solving switch puzzles, whilst searching for blue, red, and yellow keycards, which could possibly open up the level's exit, or lead you to one of the many random secret weapon caches found tucked away. All while reducing the many horrifying minions of hell into mincemeat with the rattle of your chain gun, or blowing them to Kingdom Come with a well-timed RPG. And that's alright in my opinion. The prior release had an excellent format that, with a few tweaks and additions, could have been amazing, but sadly in due part to the lacking power behind most PCs of the time, they couldn't have implemented these minor changes in while making the first game. But, now that it's 1994, oh baby, look at all the power in that! Now we're cooking! Even within the short time frame of Doom 2's development cycle, the folks at id Software were able to take full advantage of the higher memory and overall beefier computers at the time. On a whole, the stages in Doom 2 are larger, more intricately designed. To a fault at points, but I'll throw my hat into that discussion later in the video, and are filled to the brim with demons, Seriously, even with the first level of the game, you'll quickly be swarmed with the demonic cannon fodder if you're not paying attention. Oh, they brought the boys! Oh god! Are they? They're in? Okay, they're already killing each other. This is awesome. And very overwhelming. Yeah, I'm still not very good at Doom. Call me a little baby boy, because the mere thought of playing this game on anything above Hurt Me Plenty makes me call out for my mother.
I want mommy, I want milk, I want to be held.
Sure, this did mean that those with an older model PC wouldn't be able to experience the newest addition to the rapidly expanding FPS genre, but the additions to the formula were well worth the sacrifice. My personal favorite add-on to the Doom series was by far the addition of several new foes to the existing enemy roster, some of which should have been left to rot on a floppy disk in John Romero's basement. First up, we have the heavy weapons guy. No, not that one. I'm talking about this bald man. I said not that one. Though the more commonly used name for this enemy is far more fitting in my opinion. Chain gunners. And boy, I've got a lot to say about these guys. From aesthetics alone, you're probably able to see that this is yet another pillar of the zombie soldier bloodline. Though, unlike its brothers, instead of using a rifle or shotgun, these undead bastards decided to pick up a minigun, and safe to say, they are very effective with them! Much like their other counterparts, the chain gunner is a hit scan enemy. For those not in touch with FPS lingo, a hit scanner is an enemy who will shoot you no matter what, as long as you are within their sightline and nothing is obscuring you. And even though there are a few enemies of that variety in Doom 2, the chain gunner is by far the most brutal. Since it uses a chain gun, it's able to fuck you up way faster than anything else, and you can't dodge it.
Alright, that's good. Okay. Alright, okay, that's good. It's enough slice!
It's part of what makes the chain gunner by far the most dangerous zombie man in all of the classic Doom titles. And somewhere around level 10 or so, the game likes to be an absolute fucker with where the chain gunner spawns. Above you on a platform, behind you, or sometimes you open up a door and there's fucking 3 of them just standing there. You can try and run, but you'll die. Luckily though, they are an early game mook, a threatening one to be sure, but as long as you can identify where they are ahead of time, it's pretty easy to take them out with the most basic weapons. And acting as a near mirror of the chain gunner, we've got the Hell Knights. Now, for those of you with keen eyes, you'll be able to notice that these are pretty much recolors of the Barons from the first game. Large demons with a comparatively dense health bar, and powerful flaming balls, which the Hell Knights will fling towards you. And if 1 or 2 of them hit you, that'll be enough to send you back to the start of the game. Clearly an intimidating foe to be sure, but they are nowhere near as strong as the Baron from the prior game. With around half of the total health points attributed, assuming you head into an encounter with this guy with your wits about you, they aren't too threatening in the end. Also, I don't know how to organically flow this into the next segment, but in one level you reach an area where an entire horde of Hell Knights are standing on a platform. Trying to attack them will lead to death, but if you check the area next to the platform, you may notice a switch. Run over and click it, and suddenly a stone pillar from above the demons will slowly lower from the roof, flattening them like a goddamn pancake. And I just think that's lovely. The appropriately named Arachnotron suffers a very similar fate to the Hell Knight. It's the other demon! It's the other boss demon from Doom 1! Okay, alright. They are also just normal enemies now. In the Arachnotron's case, it derives from the Spider Demon, who served as the final boss in Doom 1. Now, while I found the boss variant of this enemy to be a rather spongy, boring fight, I don't have any issues with the Arachnotron. This Krang from TMNT with mechanical spider legs attached to it will use a plasma gun to burn you to a crisp, but the projectiles are easy to dodge, making this demon a fun challenge to overcome. Also, its design is just really fucking cool. Revenants are little more than a human skeleton held together by what few remaining strings of blood and gore they have left. Equipped with dual rocket launchers, which, you know, do that thing that rockets tend to do to people. Fairly deadly, all things considered. But since it's a physical object, its threat level goes down so long as you have room to maneuver around the rockets. Though there are more than a few occasions where you're stuck in corridors, so just remember to keep your guard up. Their health bars are fairly beefy, but once again, with the new weapon introduced especially, they'll go down after 1 or 2, maybe 3 shots if you're not hitting all of them practically. All in all, pretty cool addition. Really like the design on this one as well.
Whatever Daddy wants, Daddy gets.
This massive thing is called a mancubus. And before anyone claims I'm playing into harmful and negative stereotypes with that Redditor meme a second ago, don't get mad at me, be mad at id Software, cause even the goddamn manual calls him a fat ass. Using 2 modified flamethrowers, which have taken the place of its hands, the mancubus is a mountain. Its fireballs have a shockingly fast fire rate and can easily catch an unprepared player off guard. But their intimidating stature comes with one very noticeable disadvantage. Well, he's
Hey, fat.
It has one of, if not the most slow walking speed in the entire game, lumbering towards the player at a snail's pace, making it easy fodder for any one of the weapons in your arsenal, except for maybe the chainsaw? Alright, for those of you who've played this game, you already know what the last 2 demons I've yet to mention are, and you should have prayed for me, because fuck! I was not prepared for them. Let's get the one I can actually find positives in out of the way. But don't you worry your round, goofy face. I'm coming back for you. What you just saw was my first encounter with an Archvile in Doom 2. And I had no idea how to combat this pesky demon. It's almost like the developers purposely created this enemy to annoy every single person who touched their game. For starters, if the Archvile follows you into a room full of corpses, he'll resurrect them. And as you can probably guess, it's very easy to fall into a cycle of killing weaker enemies, only for the Archvile to revive them once again, and again, and again. Not to mention, its attack is completely unavoidable. Run as far away as you want. You'll still get melted by the being's fire column attack. That is, if you're a bit slow like I am. As embarrassing as it is to admit, I genuinely had no idea how to face off against the Archvile without dying to its hit scan. That was until I read a few comments on my video back in the day. And a couple of you very, very helpful viewers told me that all I had to do was break their line of sight. With this knowledge in hand, they are so much easier to deal with. Overall, I like them, but boy do they make my blood boil.
What the fuck is this piece of shit?
Pain elementals have a very fitting name, because they cause me so much pain that I would rather shove a toothpick inside my unmentionables than fight them. They sully the name of my favorite demon in Doom by having the nerve to resemble them in appearance, especially with those stupid, useless arms hanging off of the thing. What are you gonna do with them? Give me an unwanted hug? Because you look like the type! Full disclosure, I am being needlessly harsh on this ugly motherfucker. And you might be wondering why. Well, for those of you who watched my first video, you'll recall that my least favorite enemy type was the Lost Soul. Well, this motherfucking thing shoots lost souls! And they just keep coming. You just keep killing. And you think you do it thinking it'd stop, but no, once you kill it, it spawns even more lost souls! At least watching this thing explode is better than the stupid skulls. You know what? No, screw this thing. No positives. I hate it. And that's about it when it comes to the new demons. I've gotta say, the added variety makes the combat in this game much more satisfying. They all play quite well together, and they all help keep the shooting feeling new and fresh. But you'd think with such quality thrown into the enemy gallery, that we'd be gifted with a ton of new toys to play with in the game's sandbox. Yet, we definitely weren't. They stuck to the basics. with only one new addition, and quite frankly, it's really all you need. The Super Shotgun is the quintessential video game boomstick. The power is incredible, capable of destroying even the most ferocious demons hell can throw at you. Not only is it strong, but it's shockingly versatile, able to put down entire crowds of zombie soldiers without much trouble at all. As well as inheriting the standard shotgun's shooting range. Seriously? A shotgun should not be able to eviscerate beings from this far away. In the later Doom titles, this is the weapon the Doomslayer considered to be his own Excalibur, and it earned that right. Despite the few blights on an otherwise perfect formula for the classic Doom combat, I am overall extremely impressed with how much fun I had with Doom 2. But now that I've got my more positive thoughts out, let's get into something I feel much more mixed about. A more modern criticism often levied against Doom 2 revolves around the levels. On a whole, the community seems to think that after the first 11 maps or so, the game reverts back to the complex and very cryptic puzzles of the first game, only on a much larger scale. Instead of spending only around like 20 or 30 minutes running around the maps, hoping to God you find the path forward, you'll be spending upwards of an hour on some of these areas, thanks to the larger map size. And if you recall my stance on maze-like level design, this quite literally sounds like my personal hell. It doesn't help that the game also abandons the episodic format of its predecessors and instead opts for a long, uninterrupted flow of missions. Meaning that, at least in my case, I would probably feel a bit burnt out after playing for a while. But while playing through the game myself for this video, I was actually thrown for a loop, not understanding a single one of the criticisms thrown at Doom 2. And if anything, the earlier levels centered on the spaceport seem to address many of the issues I had with the first game. The puzzles are less cryptic, and can be figured out by anyone with half a brain cell. Coincidentally, that's one more than I have. Hell, I even found many more secrets than I ever did in the first game. Not to mention, the increase in enemy numbers made the few times where I had to run around much more tolerable. My only real issue thus far was being forced to blindly navigate extremely dark tunnels. I literally can't see. But yeah, overall I was having much more fun with this game than I was in Doom 2. That was until I reached level 8. Tricks and Traps, designed by Sandy Peterson, is not a bad level, but taking a look around the spawn area tells you that this map is unlike the others. Rather than progressing through an entire area, finding the exit at the end, you'll have to overcome the challenges waiting behind each door. A room full of barons and hell knights, a crowd of floating cacodemons watching the spinning pillars of human flesh, and so on and so forth. Though I will say, many of these encounters seem to be made with the intention of catching new players off guard. Like this entire segment here. I'm going to grab that skull, beeline it to the red gate, and leave. YOLO. Oh! Now, there is something to be said about a surprise enemy ambush, and honestly, it's pretty damn clear that this is a trap. I don't know, this is definitely a point of contention, but it's my opinion that if an encounter is planned out in such a way where an uninitiated player will be given very little to no chance of surviving the first run, I don't know, I wouldn't consider that good design, but I'm open to discussion about this. Regardless, while not bad, Map 8 is a sign of things to come. The map designers, them being John Romero, Sandy Peterson, American McGee, he's probably French, and Sean Green, decided to make many of the game's maps more experimental in nature. The absolute worst of it all being centralized in the city levels. Apart from the urban environment being somewhat visually interesting, I don't know, actually on second thought, I don't know if they really pulled it off in the Doom engine. I'm not really the biggest fan of this level pack. Nearly every level from map 12 onward is intricately designed and massive. Seriously, while overall I think the larger maps become more of a hindrance to the game's quality, it's still impressive to see levels of this size in a game from 1994. But once again, every level from this point on can be summarized as the following. You spawn in, engage in an intense and very enjoyable battle with a large horde of demons, and then afterwards, you spend upwards of an hour sprinting around the map, dry humping every wall hoping you'll trigger some kind of hidden secret you've been missing, all the while, the corpses of your past victims mock you. because the way forward was right in front of you the whole time. You just had to push a few buttons on the other side of the map. Or, in one case, assume that interacting with a pillar of metal crates surrounded by other similarly textured crates is secretly a retractable pillar, which will then allow you to reach the exit. Can you see why this stops being fun? It'd be one thing if it was in semi-short bursts of around 10 to 20 minutes every map or so, but as I said earlier, these levels tend to overstay their welcome. On average, the stages in the latter half of the game took me around 30 minutes to complete, adding or subtracting a few minutes depending on the map. This is probably mostly because I'm a tad bit stupid. Still, downtown is incredibly slow-paced and cryptic when it comes to navigation. Barrels of Fun got me killed in the same way, over and over and over again, far too many times.
Well, barrels, you little fucker, what you on? What are you on?
And the less I say about the chasm, the better. But for every bad level, there are fantastic ones to counterbalance them. All of the maps in the spaceport segment are fun. Some of them definitely feel gimmicky, but are enjoyable nonetheless. Some of my favorite levels are Underhaul, Waste Tunnel, Dead Simple, Industrial Zone, and Monster Condo. Solely because it's called Monster Condo, you can't not like that. Take both the good and the bad, and you've got a rather inconsistent adventure through the bloody remains of human civilization and hell itself. Doom 2 is an amazing sequel to the first Doom game. Even without the incredible word of mouth spread about the series thanks to the first game, it's a title which can very easily stand on its own. Sure, it doesn't reinvent the wheel, and quite frankly, it didn't need to. The game simply expands and adds on to the wonderfully influential title that preceded it. Though it does falter in some places. The game can feel monotonous after a while. Levels are complex to a fault, sometimes prioritizing gimmicks over competent design. Doom 2 is a game with higher highs, but far lower lows. But as a whole, the package is well worth your time. The solid combat and iconic enemy types make the maps a blast to run through. Just like the first game, if you're at all interested in the history of the FPS genre, you owe it to yourself to give the game at least a single run through. I'm still not done with you, you bitch! Classic Doom mods are fantastic, and you need to play them. Hell, more often than not, they are so well put together and contain enough original assets that they more or less qualify as their own games. Now, if you're someone who's looking for a detailed explanation on how to mod the OG Doom games, you're not gonna find that here. This video is simply an overview on the Doom modding scene, and small mini-reviews of mods I found interesting. While I do make it a point to cover some of the more simplistic mods, this video is in large part focused on the larger scale projects in the modding scene, aka total conversion mods. Fear not though, if you were hoping for a modding tutorial, here's a real short and incomplete one, which is chock full of terminology I won't explain until later in the video. Step 1. Download the PK3 or WAD file you want to play. Step 2. No, I'm not showing you that one. Click off the video.
Let's fucking go!
Step 3. Plop that file into your source port of choice. Step 4. Drag and drop. Back on topic, oddly enough, I can actually recall the first time I was introduced to Doom modifications. A Did You Know gaming video on the first Doom game, narrated by the one and only Markiplier.
Did you know I will start an OnlyFans if you meet my conditions?
And with such a tantalizing first impression, why waste any more of your time? Let's dive into the world of Doom mods. But first I gotta learn how to mod the game. The first thing you'll need to get started on your journey into Doom modding is a source port. Now, what is a source port, you may be asking? Well, I mean, it literally says it in the title, but if you'd like a little bit more detail, the source code for id Software's engine was released in late December 1997. Now, interestingly, despite the original Doom game releasing on DOS, it was actually programmed, at least initially, on the Linux platform, and then had to be ported over to the new operating system. And given the game's ridiculous success, once again, was installed on more computers than Microsoft Windows at one point.
First, Windows 95 is the game platform.
Whoa! It was safe to say that creating ports of the game for other platforms was a necessity. With Doom 2 coming shortly after, it was originally intended to assist with cross-compatibility, but to no one's surprise, the fanbase went to work fiddling with the source code. Some of the most early modifications were simple bug fixes for issues discovered long ago, and yet did not receive any kind of fix. To be fair, it was the early 90s, but it's nice to see that even during gaming's early years, the fanbase was still proving to be more capable than the original creators when it came to patching pre-existing bugs. In essence, a source port is simply taking the Doom games and their engines and making them playable on a platform it was originally unavailable on. The term isn't even only applicable to fans creating their own ports of the game. It also applies to a larger corporate entity like Bethesda or id Software making new versions of the game which are compatible with modern systems. As a matter of fact, the version of Doom 1 I used to review the game a few months back was actually the most modern, officially endorsed source port. But there have been an absolute fuck ton of Doom releases over the years. Many of you in the comments on my Doom review were keen to point out a few of these official source ports, the most commonly mentioned being the Super Nintendo version and the PlayStation 1 version of the game. Apparently the PS1 Doom removes most of the music and transforms the badass atmosphere into the game and turns it into something different. Not quite survival horror, but still much more frightening than the usual ripping and tearing. And the Super Nintendo version is just a bad way to play Doom. Way lower resolution, horrible texture quality, and the game's many MIDI tracks have been compressed to hell and back. But you know, it could be worse. You could be playing it on the Game Boy Advanced. Or the 3DO. Or the Atari Jaguar. Actually, this one ended up being okay. But the fan-made source ports are where the true quality is at. Mostly because the Doom community has had this weird little trend of putting this piece of software onto literally anything in existence. Graphing calculators, smartphones, and an actual pregnancy test. My god. It's just like what Sun Tzu said. If I take all the sweat from my body and put it in water, am I salting the water? And in that case, if I'm sitting in the pot to distribute the sweat, am I pasta? I don't think he said that. But yeah, if it has the capability, you will see Doom on it. Anyway, obviously we're going to be using a PC, like a normal person, to play these mods. Now, there are more than a few options when it comes to your choice of source port, and when I say a few options, I actually mean a metric fuck ton. Holy god, there is no way I can cover all of these. Now, to my understanding, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but most of these ports seem to be specialized in a particular field. Some prioritize authenticity of the original release, such as Chocolate Doom, while others specialize in graphical improvements and overall quality of life features, like GZ Doom. Better customization for modern PC, graphical settings, resolution tweaks, on top of a whole bunch of other stuff. Oh yeah, by the way, we're going to be using GZ Doom for this video. Not only is it very easy to set up, it also seems to be one of the most popular options available, so... Now, I'm going to try and keep this section short to respect your time, because in this day and age, I'm sure I don't have to explain to you what a mod is, especially when placed in the context of a video titled Doom Mods Are Cool, or whatever I actually ended up titling it. But I'm going to do it anyway, and you can't stop me. Modding video games on PC is actually a fairly easy process. Being extremely tech-savvy is usually never needed. So long as you can recognize these two icons on screen, you've got all the experience needed to mod the vast majority of games. Making use of community-made modifications for the classic Doom titles isn't any different. All you need to do is watch maybe 1 or 2 good YouTube tutorials and you'll be fine. Case in point, me! Yeah, that joke at the beginning of the video with me looking up how to mod the game, that wasn't a joke, it was something I actually had to do here. Speaking of which, after you guys finish this video, I want you to head on over to Icarus Lives YouTube channel and give him a good old slap on the subscribe button. Not only does he produce some excellent Doom modding videos, he's one of the major resources I used to find mods to discuss for this video. But yeah, with a little finicking, you'll be playing all the Doom mods, that's the classic file naming format the first couple of games used, and boy howdy, there sure are a lot of them. Seriously, Doom 1 and 2 has one of the largest catalog of community-made mods in all of gaming. And rightfully so, the game is almost 30 years old. The modding community has a few categories that their mods can fall into. You have simple level packs with custom enemy spawns and level designs, sitting right next to mods that simply add in more weapons or alter the existing graphics. And this scale continues to go higher and higher until you reach total conversion mods, which completely transform the game into something brand new. Yep, your mind isn't playing tricks on you. This is still running inside the GZ Doom engine, but we'll get more into this particular mod later in the video. So here's how this is going to go for any of the mods covered in this video. These mini reviews are my initial thoughts after playing each one for around an hour and a half, give or take a few extra minutes in a few mods. So sadly, I'm not able to give these mods the true deep dive most of them deserve, because they're all phenomenal. I don't know if you've heard me say that already. So if any of these mods covered seem interesting to you, I highly suggest downloading them. Alright, everyone got that? Cool, let's get into it. This mod was created by Jamie Bainbridge, otherwise known as Super Jamie, and John Vale, or 20 Ounce, in 2010. Though the development history actually extends even further back, as the concept which would later become UAC Ultra was worked on in 2008 by Jamie alone. But after 4 test levels, Jamie scrapped the project, unsatisfied with the results. That was until Jamie met another Doom creator, John Vale, and the two of them discussed the idea of creating maps which made use of new texture sets. In fact, both of them found out that they were both interested in using texture sets from the game Quake, another id Software classic.
Hear that? I'm a penis.
From there, the pair started up development in early 2009, leading us to where we are now, a guy making a mini review of a mod officially released when he was 7 years old. Yeah, so you know how in the other video I said I felt old? Yeah, this makes me feel young. I decided to include this mod in the video because it represents what I consider to be a fairly simple, yet passion-filled gaming experience. These developers are clearly devoted Doom fans with a love and understanding of what makes these games so endearing to audiences. And they teamed up to craft a custom Doom experience for fans looking for a bit more retro demon killing. Sure, it might not be as impressive as taking the basic framework of Doom and altering it until it scarcely resembles the source material, but that doesn't mean it's not worth discussing. In fact, I find it wholesome in a way, which is funny because this is a game where you do this on a repeated basis. As a mod for Doom 2, UAC Ultra contains many of the same weapons and demons found in the base experience, though Jamie and John made small alterations to the weapon view models. Nothing crazy, but the effort is appreciated. But that pales in comparison to the 2 new monsters they created for this project. Seriously, I know I made it a point to call this mod a simple map pack for Doom 2, but come on! How can you guys not respect the effort of creating an entirely new enemy to fight in the game? Too bad I never got to see them myself. I'll get into the reason why later, but I just want it to be known, the tremendous amount of dedication and talent on display with these 2 new demons. It's amazing. I just wish I wasn't such a weak small goofy guy who's too much of a bitch to get past difficulty spikes. While there isn't anything as impressive as the 2 custom demons found in this mod, I would be beating myself up if I didn't compliment this mod's use of environmental storytelling. Something as simple as a sign flashing warnings of radioactivity, letting the staff know that there's a quarantine in effect. It all goes a long way when it comes to the immersion value. Honestly, I'd say it goes a step above the first game, where the only story segments you were given came from the ending text scrolls in between episodes, or maybe a few bodies sprawled about. Obviously not bad, and for its time, it might as well have been amazing. But I mean, UAC Ultra has doors that'll only switch open once both panels have been activated. So this is the better game. Also, the new textures are a nice change of pace from the typical Doom walls, and they certainly add to the dark and violent atmosphere the mod creates. Something about it almost seems more visceral than the original game. Though, and this isn't unusual for me, I can't completely explain why. It might have something to do with the obvious Quake influences, dark browns and grays. It makes the gruesome violence stand out wonderfully. And while the atmosphere might give off a hopeless, oppressive atmosphere, the gameplay is fast and fluid. Moving from corridor to corridor, unloading round after round into demons is just as satisfying as ever. Though the difficulty assumes you're familiar with the primary experience. Although, if you've gone through the effort of downloading a source port and locating this PK3, I think that's a more than reasonable assumption. On level 1, you're given a shotgun in the first room, and after stepping out into the stunning vista before you, seriously, this backdrop was so nice, I even made it my desktop background for a couple days. You're assaulted by 2 pinkies. Yep, this mod isn't holding back, and good God does it feel good. At first. Yep, I am almost hesitant to bring this point up because it's essentially admitting that I have the gaming skills of an IGN journalist.
Is just full of the exaggerated swagger of a black teen.
But damn, can this mod be difficult at times. Mostly in a fun, makes me want to try again kind of way, but this fucking archvile. Oh! Once again, I'm probably just garbage at the game, but this first encounter with the Archvile was absolutely infuriating. Like, aside from the cool introduction, watching the guy teleport in before fighting him, this shit made me angry! Death after death after death. Like, I'm not even exactly sure what I could have done differently. And his little fire column attacks do so much damage, and all I can do is circle strafe and throw fucking BBs at this guy. So you know what I did? I rage quit. I regret this, and I also regret publicly admitting it, but yeah. And before you guys say it, I was playing on Hurt Me Plenty, alright? I am a member of the I Only Play Games on Normal club. Whew. Anyway, yeah, good mod, you should play it.
Is it something like ice burns as hot as fire?
So, I'm about to compare this mod to UAC Ultra a lot in order to, put up a comparison on the levels of effort on display, but despite my comparisons, they are not made by the same author, and I am in no way trying to belittle the dedication put into UAC Ultra, but I do like Winter's Fury more. Developed by Pyro Scourge and released in 2012, Winter's Fury is a partial conversion of Doom 2, replacing the demonic and hellish environments for an undying cold. Speaking of which, oh my god, I love a good snowy setting. Which is funny, because ice physics make me want to jump into a frozen pond.
And my new band is called...
When describing UAC Ultra, I referred to it as a standard mod, making use of most of the same assets as the base game, with a few new additions sprinkled in here and there, but all in all, it's simply another map to shoot through to satisfy the itch for some classic Doom. Winter's Fury is what I consider to be the logical next step. Take a few new textures for the environment, and amplify it to completely brand new ones. Ice and snow, frozen metal and lakes. It's a nice change of pace from the bloody walls and browns and grays of the original games. And don't get me wrong on this, there is still plenty of blood. And take a few new mechanics, put in for immersion, and add in more of them. While we're at it, take the decently fleshed out backstory in UAC Ultra and turn it into an integral part of the experience. Pyro Scourge made something truly special here. A fact that is made obvious as soon as you open up the game. An opening cinematic plays out, effectively cluing the player into the world of the mod. And it's not exclusive to the opening either. Peppered throughout the campaign, you'll come across quite a few cinematics. And sure, most of the characters in these cutscenes are simple recolors of the Marines, including our protagonist, by the way. Oops. And I'm sure someone with no interest in retro shooters won't be impressed by this at all, but the original Doom games had nothing like this, so by virtue alone, it's incredibly impressive. Not to mention that it takes a pretty hefty amount of work to write a story, and even longer if you want to include constant dialogue, which, for the record, this mod does quite often. Progressing past a certain point in a mission or triggering a specific event will usually give you a bit of dialogue from a main man, Sergeant Morse. It's obvious that the narrative is a key part of the mod, and I wouldn't be doing my due diligence if I didn't at least provide a base summary of the events. After the demon Baphomet was defeated back on Earth, the UAC relocated his body to Siberia, where they placed its corpse into a device known as the Aurora Vault, and buried the demon leader in the vault deep underneath the snow and ice. The demons, however, did not disappear with the death of their leadership. Packs of the demonic horde roamed the land, terrorizing the people still. Demons en masse started to approach Baphomet's tomb in Siberia. Realizing the danger, the UAC forms tactical demon killer squads to neutralize any demonic threat they may encounter and secure the burial site. And since this is a Doom game, you can probably guess what happens next. story isn't anything completely unique and amazing, but it gets the job done and provides a fairly interesting setup. Though even when Doom gets super lore intensive, no matter how well written and engaging the writing is, the main reason we play Doom doesn't change. Let's kill some shit. Now, you might be wondering why I just showed a couple clips of Doom Eternal gameplay. And that's because this game reminds me of this mod in more ways than one. Obviously, they're both Doom products with heaps of lore and a focus on more cinematic storytelling, but they also play far more similarly than one would think. The gameplay is hectic, throwing overwhelming numbers and demons that can punch harder and take more damage than you can. Tackling these encounters is a dance of running around like a chicken with its head cut off, analyzing the demons you're dealing with, and gradually whittling away the horde by prioritizing specific enemies, as well as hoping to God you don't run out of ammo before you can kill them. This happened to me more times than I can count. The gameplay, just like Doom Eternal for that matter, can sometimes feel a bit cheap. And while I am by my own admission, a bitch, when it comes to difficulty in my games, I could not stop playing this mod. Something about the difficulty progression and the utterly insane spikes in difficulty was extremely addicting. Every death was simply another reason to hop back in and pop a cap in that fucking Ice Knight's face. Oh! But this mod does have a few cheap shots. Sometimes monsters will spawn in an area you've already cleared without warning and hit you in the back when your guard is down, or you'll be body blocked and unable to run as an ice pinky eats you alive, or this fucking ice pond trap. Guess what? This almost made me rage quit for a second time. I know, once again, bitch. And like I alluded to in the opening paragraph for this chapter, the mod includes a whole heap of new content to go through. For starters, all the weapons have been redone in both big and small ways. Each one has been given a wonderfully new animated sprite, and honestly, I love them all. Though the double-barreled shotgun looks a bit off to me, it kinda reminds me of the one in Duke Nukem 3D.
I'm here to intercourse your dad.
But the true showstopper when it comes to the new stuff in this package are the new demon and world textures. The familiar demonic entities we all know and love have been given a makeover to fit the ice aesthetic. Their bodies are pale, ice clings to their body in jagged spikes. And my favorite addition, they have blue eyes now! Yeah, I know these are very simple recolors once again, but I don't know, I like them a lot, leave me alone! And like every mod in this video, I was only able to play 3 or 4 levels, but my god, I was actually glued to my screen, and I'm definitely returning to this title once I finish making this video. Alright, it's taken us a while, ladies and gentlemen, but here we are, the very first Doom mod I've ever seen, narrated by the wonderful voice of Markiplier.
My OnlyFans is now available through the link in the description below.
Brutal Doom is an overhaul of the first 2 Doom games that even got recognition by John Carmack. Developed by a guy going by the name of Sergeant Mark IV, this mod sets out to make the original Doom games, well, brutal.
He said it! He said it!
The level design remains largely intact, give or take a few altered or added enemy spawns. And holy moly did he succeed! This mod is first and foremost a gore mod. My god, I sound like a psycho saying shit like this. But it's true, and it's amazing. While it might seem weird to plop this mod towards the end of the video when the progression has been simple mod, slightly more complex, and so on and so forth, well, that's because despite being a repackaged way to revisit the first 2 Doom games, I find that it does not play that way at all. This mod is, say it with me now, a frantic, gory, and incredibly fun first-person shooting experience. I actually don't even know where to start, really. Oh my god, I just really enjoyed my time with Brutal Doom. So much so, it's actually kind of hard to properly explain why. Though these videos are more or less slightly organized ramblings, therefore I guess I'll give it a shot. Let's start with the weapons. They've all received an updated look, including much more intricate designs that still manage to retain a bit of the classic Doom model's charm. Although the pistol does have this weird quirk. From the view model, it looks exactly like the base game's handgun, but when you use the mod's reloading mechanic, it just straight up looks like a different pistol. I don't know, maybe it's a perspective thing, but come on, that looks weird. Pistol aside, I do like the new designs. And hell, there's even a new weapon this time around. The SMG. What's there really to say about this? It's fast, deals out moderate damage, but makes up for it with a super speedy firing rate and quick reload. And it very quickly became my go-to weapon during my playthrough of Brutal Doom. There is also the assault rifle. In fact, it's one of the weapons you can choose to start the game off with. Though, I'm not the biggest fan of the gun. The fire rate is a bit too slow for my liking, and I don't know, it's smelly. Not really my favorite, but its inclusion is still appreciated. Not to mention, it's the first gun you'll watch perform two things I'm guessing the Doom community found controversial: iron sight aiming and reloading. Meanwhile, I don't really care. I have the same opinions on ADS in the modern Halo games. If you don't like it, just don't use them. I don't know, I see no problem with it. Reloading is a bit more iffy, as especially with the demon's more aggressive attack patterns, it can really leave you in a bad situation. Although this is still a subjective take. Feel free to argue or disagree with me in the comments. Can't deny the fact that aiming down sights with a shotgun feels more cursed than anything I've seen in Cursed Doom. The monsters in Brutal Doom haven't received any redesigns, but there is no doubt about the fact that they've been changed under the hood. All the demons attack more often, projectiles do additional damage, and as if that wasn't bad enough, they have new attacks. For example, imps will no longer only try to throw balls at you. Now, they'll literally leap out and rip you to pieces. Honestly, this is a great change that I love. I don't know why they didn't have a melee attack in the original game, but then again, this mod came out in 2010. Hindsight is an awful thing. Actually, there is something else that I noticed about the demons in Brutal Doom. A feature that is actually included in the base game, but one I rarely noticed during my playtime. Demon infighting. If at any point one demon accidentally takes a chunk out of their pal, the gloves come off and the two hellspawn fight to the death, usually giving you a second to either save some ammo or run away while the enemies are distracted. Now, they can either simply shoot each other, but if you piss off a Pinky, he will literally consume you! Jesus Christ! But my favorite example is when a zombie soldier managed to kill me, and then proceeded to unload his entire mag into my limp, lifeless body, reload, and then do it again. But one of his homeboys got a little too close and took a shot. He then murdered the first zombie and continued the cycle of violence. Good mod, go play it. Here we are, folks, the end of the road. We've seen simple map packs, projects with enough new content to be considered their own fan games, and even modifications that allow us to experience these classic shooters in new ways. But we've reached the end of our journey. Welcome to the Total Conversion mods. For this section of the video, I've decided to lump Total Chaos and Blades of Agony together, mostly because I feel like I'm doing these particular mods a disservice by only playing an hour of each. Total Conversion mods, as I've said countless times before in this video, are practically their own games. Complicated game mechanics, further story progression, and hours upon hours of gameplay to share with us. However, given the shocking amount of content I have to go over in this video, I've elected to give them the same first impressions template as the other mods. But please do not mistake that choice as a dismissal of these games. If at any point during the following you think it's worth playing, please head over to ModDB and give them a shot. Anyway, I think it's about time we take a trip to a forgotten paradise. Your eyes may be going out, so for God's sake, clean your smudgy glasses. Actually, I should do the same. But this is still running in the GZ Doom engine. This is the mod that inspired me to make this video alongside Brutal Doom. No matter who you are, or what you think about survival horror games, you cannot deny that making this from an engine used to produce games like this isn't at the very least technically impressive. Total Chaos is a total conversion mod made for the GZ Doom engine, developed by a guy named Wadaholic. It would take a dev with a name which is a fun play on the word workaholic to make a Doom mod like this. It's a survival horror experience with tight, claustrophobic corridors, horrifying monsters, and a heavy emphasis on crafting items and melee combat. This mod is relatively old, but not when compared to the others. It had its first release in 2016, before the final version of the mod was dropped in 2018. Why am I considering something as recent as 2018? Well, because, at least for the general public, this mod completely slipped under our radar. Despite the game calling back to the early days of YouTube Let's Plays, none of the big guys in the genre picked up the game.
I would not mind posting tasteful nudes of myself.
And as such, it was praised, as it should be, by the Doom modding community alone. This incredibly ambitious project deserved far more recognition, and luckily in 2022, it would get just that thanks to a very specific YouTuber.
Immigration has ruined Britain.
Yep, that's right. The guy dating the girl who draws fat, furry fetish art is also the one who introduced me to this wonderful piece of horror. Jokes aside, Pyrocynical's video on this game is far more in-depth and way more well-produced than anything you'll see in this video. So if you're looking for a deep dive into Total Chaos, you should all watch this video. Wow, a channel with 500 subscribers is telling you to watch a video from a YouTuber with over 3 million subscribers. This takes preaching to the choir to a whole new level. Also, yeah, I'm not really covering Total Chaos in this video, I baited you,
Anybody else who likes pot, reach for my joint.
Blade of Agony is a massively, though not as impressive as Total Chaos, total conversion mod for Doom 2. And as I'll get into later, this mod might as well be considered a lost Wolfenstein game. The production value is through the roof, all the model work, textures, and audio design is top notch, and as if I didn't have any more ground to stand on for this being a standalone game, I didn't even launch this one from the GZ Doom application. It has its own .exe file to play the game. On that note, having an opening cinematic in your mod is a big plus for me, as it's a sign of confidence and tremendous faith in your project. And this game has two of them. The first one is a simple pan through a soldier's window with a letter he was writing slowly scrolling past the screen. The writing is pretty decent, but I feel like it goes on for a bit too long. Doesn't help that we get another cutscene immediately after, one that would have better served the role of opening set piece. In it, the camera pans through a forest while newspapers flash by the screen, showcasing the desperate state of the world as the war progresses in Germany's favor. It's presented well, conveys the state of affairs nicely, and it doesn't overstay its welcome. I can understand and appreciate the ambition of trying to tell a more character-driven story, and it definitely helps add some much-needed depth to the characters in the mod. But I feel like these two should have been swapped out, or maybe combined? Either way, it's not a huge deal, and I'm definitely just nitpicking. You play as BJ Blazkowicz, the protagonist from the other Wolfenstein games. Well, I mean the good ones anyway. Being redeployed after receiving a letter from a soldier he once served with, in a desperate attempt to ease the burden on the Allies in Europe. The German forces are relentless and making rapid progress in their campaign. It's up to you to run special operations and uncover the truth behind the Nazi war machine. When it comes to the base gameplay, say it with me now, it's fast, frantic, gory, and always incredibly fun with the perfect amount of first-person shooting experience. Though this game does encourage a more tactical style of play. The game makes it a point to tell you to stick behind covers to avoid being filled with bullet holes. You're also given a combat knife to silently take out enemy combatants. Though the stealth system definitely needs more work and it hardly ever worked for me. Oh, and this one killed me the most. Landmines!
Landmines! It was landmines.
Yep, from time to time you'll find minefields which demand you slow your roll and focus on avoiding becoming a plant versus zombie. Though with the first two missions under my belt, the most efficient and fun way to complete your tasks is to run through the mission, murdering every single Nazi you come across. And dogs. You unfortunately end up murking a lot of poor Mein Kampf reading doggies, using all the weapons you associate with this time period. The Walter, MP40, and the Gruer, which is greatly underrated in my opinion. They all feel great, And aside from killing, you've also got a hub world that you return to in between missions. Here you can either complete small quests for NPCs, buy better equipment at the armory, and even flirt with a French woman who has her accent typed out in her dialogue. Or get body blocked once again because one of these goofy NPCs gets stuck in the damn door. Cornelius, get the cotton out of your ears and take 2 more steps! Or you could watch this guy piss. Badly. But in all seriousness, the hub world is an amazing add-on. It features tons of immersion value, the production value is through the roof, and honestly, it just helps the game feel more different, and I really appreciate it. This mod is fantastic. It's one of my favorite Wolfenstein games of all time now. You should play it. The Doom modding community is one of the most talented in all of gaming. Being able to produce such well-made pieces of playable mayhem, consistently, and also with a certain air of polish to them. If you boot up any Doom WAD or PK3 file, chances are at the very least, you'll get an experience with tons of fast-paced, tense demon-killing gameplay. And I hardly touched the surface with this video. I only went and tackled a few of the games I thought were interesting. Even then, I had to cut back on what I showcased because I do not have the storage to add another hour of 3 mods to this already 40+ minute long video. There are way more mods that feel completely unrelated to the classic they stem from. For example, take a look at this. This is a mod called Sonic Roboblast 2. Looks pretty cool, right? Kinda like a more open-ended classic Sonic experience. So now you might be wondering, why did I not include this game in the video? Well, it's because this mod has its own mods! Let's do this again, shall we? Doom 1 and 2 were first-person shooters released for PCs in the early 90s, almost immediately catching the eye of the general public with its brutalist take on first-person shooting, which is also a genre popularized by Doom's landmark success. Such noteworthy series such as Duke Nukem, Shadow Warrior, and even an IP that had already dominated pop culture decades before could not escape being labeled a Doom clone. A popular, if a bit insulting title for the pioneers in what is perhaps the most well-known style of games on the market today. And id Software did not wait to capitalize on their hellish duology either. Expansion packs for both main entries hit the shelves soon after, introducing new levels and overall increasing the time players spent in hell. Though, that only covered those who owned a PC, and in Doom 2's case, a rather beefy one at that. Even though the console market wasn't quite the Goliath it is today, it still accounted for a decent chunk of the industry in the 90s, and since Doom was the hottest thing on the block, obviously they wanted a slice of the action as well. Its response? A lobotomy. Consoles around the time were far from ready for Doom, both demographically, as systems like the Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo were seen as fancy toys for kids around the time, and literally. Come on, if Doom 2 brought PCs to its knees, I don't even want to think about what it'd do to Mario.
Mamma mia! Here we go again!
But that didn't stop the publishers from trying, with ports to practically every old school video game console out at the time, even the ones that failed completely. Looking at you, 3DO. God, why does it run this bad? But the ones most commonly cited are the versions on the Sega 32X, Super Nintendo, the Game Boy Advance, and the PlayStation 1. Now, I've poked fun at these ports of the games in the past, but I can't deny how impressive they really are, with a few withstanding, but that goes without saying. All of them provide the same demon-blasting experience found in the original, with enough oddities to make them feel unique when compared. Especially the one made for the PlayStation 1, where they decided to change the soundtrack into something more intense and visceral, utterly uprooting the kick-ass nature for something far more frightening. Full credit goes to the game's composer, Aubrey Hodges, for this shift. And just a mere 2 years later, he'd go on to provide the soundtrack for yet another Doom project. One not made by the original developers, and instead made by a team hailing from the same studio which were responsible for a certain title which also pushed the bar when it came to graphic violence in gaming. That's right, Rampage! For a system known for kiddie 3D platformers, let's talk about Doom 64. Doom 64 is an odd game. In modern day, it's one that's almost equally as known as it is obscure. Allow me to elaborate, because I know for a fact that I just spat some serious word vomit at you. It's a video game known by the wider Doom community solely because it's known as one of the more obscure additions to the franchise, with the majority of people not actually having played this particular game for themselves. This happenstance is thanks to a few factors. For starters, the majority of Doom players were on PC, and unless they owned one before, I doubt that many of them went out of their way to buy a Nintendo 64, not sure if playing the next mainline Doom game is worth $200. And that's assuming that they even knew that Doom 64 was a totally original game, and not just a port of the original for the 64's audience. And the confusion is well justified. The N64 was absolutely flooded with basic ports of the games from other systems. Mega Man 64, and most appealing for the audience for this video, Duke Nukem 64. Jesus Christ, how often am I going to say N64? Were both ports of games which were already available on the market beforehand. Most egregious in Mega Man's case, since they added very little in the way of new content to that version, while the ass-chewing Macho Man received redone weapon sprites and expanded levels.
Fucking dick kick him.
And when looking at screenshots for Doom 64, it's not difficult to come to that conclusion on your own. Hell, it's literally exactly what happened to me. But no, Doom 64 is a completely original product with no ties to the others. Aside from enemies, weapons, engine, and similar environments. Hey, it's still its own game, damn it! But since they decided to slap the 64 to the title and remove any unique subtitle, some of us got confused. Which is even funnier when you realize that early on in development, the game originally had a subtitle. It was called Doom Absolution. Look, it's better than Doom 64, okay? Tangent over. Let's get into the game's development history. As I mentioned earlier, Doom 64 was not developed by the boys over at id Software. They had their hands full of creating the second largest retro shooter franchise, Quake. This time around, we have Midway Games to thank for this murderous adventure through the gates of hell. The very same people who helped give us Mortal Kombat Gorf. It's Gorf. Best game of the century, and I will hear no objections whatsoever. More specifically, the game was developed by Midway's San Diego division, with id Software providing feedback and oversight on the project's development. Doom Absolution, as it was called at the time, began full production in late 1994, which was very surprising to learn. That was the same year that Doom 2 launched, which was only 1 year after the first game came out. Man, there really was a lot of Doom goodness in the 90s, huh? Too bad I was literally not in existence yet. The team at Midway were ambitious as well. Aside from crafting a wholly original plot and new level designs, they also completely recreated all the weapons and demon sprites for this outing. We'll get into specifics in a bit. For now, I'll say that the art design for Doom 64 is insanely bleak and imposing. The demons look dirty, grungy, and with one specific demon, looks like something straight out of the Necronomicon, which is coincidentally where these stupid little While the developers' ambitions were high, the hardware they were working with was, well, not ready for this much detail. The first big hurdle the developers had to overcome was the Nintendo 64's memory, or lack thereof. The system's stringent constraints when it came to using cartridges prevented a large number of concepts from being included in the final build of the game, a common issue that game developers ran into when it came to the N64. Hell, it's the primary reason that Square Enix took the Final Fantasy series away from Nintendo, and instead made mainline entries for the PlayStation. So inevitably, some things ended up on the cutting room floor. A handful of levels here and there, and most distressingly, demons like the Archvile, Papyrus from Undertale, and the Chain Gunner Zombie Soldier were cut. My thoughts on this? Thank God! But development pressed on. Originally slated for the Nintendo 64's launch, Doom 64 was delayed at the behest of id Software, who were dissatisfied with a decent chunk of the level designs in what was supposed to be the final build of the game. Which, by the way, id Software, You guys are most certainly not saints when it comes to bad level design. Regardless, the final version of the game was pushed back so further polish could be applied. Okay, now I'm starting to see this as foreshadowing for id Software's acquisition by Bethesda. Finally, we got our grubby little mitts on the game in mid-1997. And we're not going to talk about this original release. That's right, I wasted your time. What are you going to do, dislike the video? Oh, wait! As you can probably tell, it's decently hard to find a copy of the N64 game these days. Luckily, the game received an enhanced re-release for modern systems in 2020. Ported over to modern systems by a studio called Night Dive, Doom 64 is now running on an engine known as the Kex engine, as opposed to the original Doom engine. From what I've been able to gather from comparing footage between the two releases, they play nearly identically, but the original game is way darker. Seriously, I had trouble seeing at points in Doom 2. I don't know what you want from me here. So while the port is mostly faithful, I wanted to let you all know that there is a possibility for discrepancies between releases. But this is the version of the game that most of you are likely to play in the first place, so yeah. Kex engine! Slight correction to my summary of Doom 2. The Doom guy, as a matter of fact, did not actually get trapped in hell after defeating the Icon of Sin. It says so right in the ending text scroll after killing the boss. They don't really explain how he escaped hell after closing the portal to it. My best guess is that there was a window of time where the portal remained open despite the Icon of Sin being dead, or they were just two completely separate events and the Doom Man closed the portal after returning to the ruined Earth. In my original video, I interpreted the text as implying a sort of endless trek through the pits of hell in a vain attempt to return home when it wasn't feasible. Then again, we are playing classic Doom where the story is little more than interesting set dressing, so I suppose I should have taken the text literally. Regardless, Doom 64 opens up after the events of Doom 2. The Lone Marine, the hero who helped save Earth from total annihilation, solely because they murdered his pet rabbit, is still suffering years after rampaging through the depths of hell, suffering vivid nightmares where the demons continue to swarm him. And the stupid doctors aren't able to help quell the man's pain. But for now, all is well. The reconstruction of the devastated Earth was proceeding in the background, and in general, human civilization was healing after the invasion. That is until a lone, damaged satellite sends out one last bone-chilling message before frying itself. A terrifying demon known as the Mother Demon. I wonder if she gives birth.
Why you boring me? I'm right.
Survived the Doom guy's murder spree in hell, and is resurrecting the mountain of corpses he left in his wake, using the reanimated bodies to once again terrorize humanity. Knowing the possible danger that the Mother Demon poses, the military digs through the archives and finds the reports about the so-called Doom event.
Oh, that's why they call it that.
And as the only soldier to survive the event, the Doom guy is reinstated and once more set loose against the armies of hell. And just like every other game in the series, the plot from this point on is running from place to place, popping a cap in a Hell Knight's pale ass, until eventually you find yourself standing before the Mother Demon. And soon enough, she's dead, and you're given one of the most Doom things I've ever seen. The Doom guy stands undefeated. Blood is pouring from his eyes, but he refuses to surrender, willingly choosing to stay in hell for the rest of days to ensure that no demon ever rises again. This is unabashed rule of cool nonsense, and it's fucking awesome. The music, the blood-stained background image, and the short but effective text sprawling across the screen, it all comes together and puts a nice cap on the classic Doom series.
Run.
My favorite ending in the series by far, right above Doom 1, solely because I was not ready for the sheer shock value in that ending. As a whole, the plot is nothing special, but is an interesting enough through line to keep me murdering demons without it feeling like mindless carnage. A true Doom staple when it comes to Doom storytelling, apparently. And honestly, I think that's fine. This way you can have all the interesting lore for those who care, and none of it for those who don't. Because, yet again, you don't get any of the background details unless you read the manual. So while I can't call it good, It does its job, and I cannot fault it for that. Also, the Doom guy stays in hell purely to troll the demons. If that's not funny to you, I don't know what is. A video game soundtrack is one of the most vital resources developers have at their disposal. It's the connecting thread between all the other elements of the game, and only when all of these factors come into play can you have something truly amazing. Don't believe me? Visualize any scene from a video game you love. Have the image in your head? Good. Now I want you to go back to that game and turn off the music. Something is wrong. Everything else about the game is exactly as you remembered it, but without the background melody, it feels incomplete. Depending on who you are as a person, you may find the lack of a soundtrack calming, listening to nothing but the game's ambience. But for others, and especially me, who just finished the power fantasy that Doom and its score composed by Bobby Prince takes you on, walking through the gore-coated corridors in these maps feel uncomfortable. And that's exactly what Doom 64 aims to invoke. That feeling of absolute dread and discomfort in a game series known for empowering the player to an absurd degree. The only thing they fear is you? Well, when Aubrey Hodges is in charge of the score, you might as well be the only thing that doesn't scare them. The soundtrack for Doom 64 is incredible, just not in a traditional sense. Many of the tracks don't have any discernible melodies to them, no rhyme or reason, just the empty ambience of a dead building to keep you company. But as you continue to play through the game, encountering horrific monsters beyond your comprehension, things start to become clear in the music. Sounds familiar enough for you to recognize them, yet they are twisted, distorted. Close, but not quite what you're used to. Is that a fucking baby? Now that the spooky time is over, yes, Doom 64's soundtrack is a subversive masterpiece that took me completely by surprise once I started to play the game. I had heard whispers about the game and its music since the same composer also worked on the soundtrack for the PlayStation 1 port of Doom, and god is it great. Sure, it might not make for the best breakdance track, but when in the moment, it is unbelievably effective. And there is more than the ambient tracks. Take a listen to the endgame music for a more typical Doom sound. But yeah, overall, the whole thing is just amazing. I have quite a bit to say about Doom 64. It's an absolutely fascinating game that I feel has fallen under everybody's radar unjustly. Yet, it's actually been a struggle for me to talk about the gameplay in great detail, for everything it does differently from the original games. It's almost impressively unoriginal when it comes to the gameplay. Now, I know that doesn't sound bad initially, and it's not a red flag by any means. The game should play like the titles before it, but they should also push the series further, if even slightly. And Doom 64 does this in other areas, but not the gunplay. Allow me to elaborate. This is the third major entry in the Doom series, using the same engine as they were in 1993, meaning that the core formula for this game shares the exact same template as those other two. You run around maze-like levels, killing demons, collecting keycards, and solving switch puzzles until you reach the level's exit, sometimes fighting a boss at the end if you're lucky. And though I tried to deny this obvious facet, I can't anymore. I'm a bit worn out at this point. Marathoning the classic Doom games back-to-back has made the gameplay a bit stale. Don't misconstrue what I'm saying. Doom 64 and the classic titles as a whole are still incredibly fun boomer shooters with tons of content. Wait, can I call these boomer shooters when these were just... boomer shooters recreate, whatever. Although there are some noticeable flaws in the gameplay structure that stood out to me more than they did in the past. Some of which can be solely blamed on Doom 64's iteration on these established mechanics. But let's start with the positives first, because those are always more fun to talk about. The weapons, once again, are beyond satisfying to use against the demonic scourge. The demons, with their excellent new designs, are fun and, in some ways, more challenging than their previous incarnations. I found myself dying to the Arachnotrons far more ever than I did before. Though I'm unsure if that's just me, the stats will probably tell a different story. Minuscule programming differences aside, these are still the same mooks we've been putting even further into the ground for the last couple of years. Their attack patterns are the same. They take similar amounts of damage, and yeah, they're still good, but they don't offer up anything new. The wonderfully high polygon models help alleviate the issue to a degree, with one notable exception. See, I played the first Doom game, loved all the demons, with one exception. These stupid skulls! Otherwise called Lost Souls. Fire is hot, and heat causes burns, and burns are only fun when tied to a bedpost, so fuck these guys. I then played Doom 2, loved or tolerated the new demons, with, take a guess, one exception. This chunky son of a bitch right here, the Pain Elemental. His one and only attack is to spawn and fling my least favorite enemy from the last game at you. Eat shit, you little bitch! Fast forward to Doom 64 and we get this. In all seriousness, the new model is pretty fucking awesome and helps the Pain Elemental stand out when placed next to the Kako Demon. Not sure why the Doom 64 version has such long nails, but in the old games at least, they looked very similar, so I'm happy with the new look. What I'm far less pleased with is the fact that the new mouths allow the thing to shoot Lost Souls faster! Not to mention that these fucking things are way more deadly than they were ever in the other PC games. And that just makes me... I'm going to very gently set my controller down on my desk. But yeah, it's a bit saddening not to see much in the ways of new foes. Not at all helped by the lack of iconic demons introduced in Doom 2. I was originally going to include the Chain Gunner on that list, but Doom 64's later levels love to place hit-scanning enemies just high enough away from you so that they can kill you, but you can't kill them. So yeah, not really missing them here. I suffered the most deaths to zombie soldiers here purely because of their hit-scan attacks and significantly more cramped level design. Yes, in part due to the often cited storage constraints, Doom 64 was forced to forego the expansive and oftentimes overly large play areas as seen in Doom 2, opting instead for a healthy middle ground between tight corridors and a comparatively vast section to circle strafe through. Think of it as a compromise between the first and second game's level philosophy, although that very same philosophy brings with it some, negative design elements into this game. Maze design is back, baby, and I hate it with every goddamn cell in my body. Hyperbolic tone aside, I understand that this is merely an example of personal preference, so I'll try not to harp on it too much, and since Doom 64 maps are smaller, I found them a bit easier to navigate through, but you'll still be occasionally grinding up against random pillars, hoping to God you can activate a random hidden switch. Not great, but I suppose it could be far worse. The puzzles, though... Doom 64 is an absolutely gorgeous game. The graphics may not have the same charm found in the PC games, but as far as art design goes, I firmly believe that this is the best looking in the classic Doom series. The walls, structures, and everything is coated in a layer of dirt and grime. The difference between rust and dried blood ceases to matter as you claw your way through the abandoned Phobos base. Darkness consumes the base, with vicious monsters hiding in the dark, waiting for their moment to strike. And that's just the moon. As the game goes on, you'll be greeted with the hellish fires of, well, hell, where massive Gothic architecture dots the landscape, pillars of sin amongst an endless sea of blood and agonizing screams. You'll walk through horrific prisons, where, I guess other demons committed crimes? Not exactly sure what that's all about, but still, bodies are strung up, still wriggling around as the life ebbs away from them. And it's when their suffering is at its peak. These humans are immortalized inside the walls of these facilities, serving as little more than set dressing for whatever unfortunate soul wanders through these halls next. Unless you're me, who didn't notice these poor guys until I reached level 17. I'm capable of murdering every single... and completely lost my sanity. Killing myself with a rocket launcher. See, that's why I don't usually use that gun. Seriously though, the world in which you run around had a massive upgrade this time around. It's such a stunning improvement, so much so that I feel the team at Midway Games capture the setting id Software had in mind when making the original games better than they could. Which, by the way, they still look good. I was a fan of the environmental design there as well. But Lord have mercy, Doom 64 looks better. Which is even more impressive once you take a step back and realize that these textures were all crammed into one of these things. As we discussed earlier in this video, Midway ran into several development challenges with this title thanks to the small memory size of an N64 cartridge. At maximum, one of these gray things could only hold 64 megabytes of data. I see why that's funny, but it's like hitting me with a knock-knock joke after telling me my family died in a car wreck.
Why did the chicken cross the road?
This memory limitation forced the developers to cut back on some of the finer details in the game. For example, take a look at the Super Shotgun's reloading animation. Could you spot the issue? Now, I'm not an expert when it comes to firearms, but I'm pretty sure you don't just throw the barrel back to put new shells in the thing. Yes, sadly many of the weapon animations had to be simplified to an almost obnoxious degree. Now in normal play, you aren't likely to notice them at first, but over time, they'll spawn inside your mind. But by that same token, you'll quickly get used to them. On that note, the weapons! They're all the same guns you know and love from Doom 1 and 2, but now they look crispy. Redrawn for this game, and this game alone, the weapons now look more realistic than ever before, adding to the horrific and tense atmosphere the game aims to create. There isn't much more I can say about them, since in the grand scheme of things, they perform as expected. No one uses the fist, the chain gun and plasma gun are great at crowd control, I still find the BFG rather underwhelming, and for the most part, you'll still be exclusively using the Super Shotgun, though I will give credit where credit is due. Doom 64 has the best chainsaw design I've ever seen in a video game. With its twin blade design and UAC logo stamped right into the middle of this bad boy, it's the perfect blend of video game absurdity and bleak real-world capitalism. Oh, I also really like the way the chain gun looks. Blue fire has just always been cool to me. And as if contributing to a long-running tradition in the franchise, Doom 64 only introduces one weapon to the game, the Unmaker. But if you want to go by what the game calls it, it's the what the f***, which the team got the concept for from the Doom Bible. And despite it having an impeccable design that makes it seem like the greatest thing since this particular frame in Family Guy, the Unmaker really isn't that good, firing off a single laser each time you pull the trigger, and it's not even that strong. Sure, it can fry an imp with a single shot, but so can the shotgun as long as I'm close enough. The only positive I can think of would be the gun's decent range. Actually, no, scratch that, because by the time I made it to the last level, I realized just how useless the thing really is. During the final mission, there are 3 teleporters in the room which constantly spawn demons as you whittle down the horde. The number of demons is staggering and your weapons just can't keep up. Trying to close them brings up a text prompt that tells me I don't have the power. This wasn't a thing before this moment, and since the Unmaker is just a glorified pea shooter, I just die and die. Fuck this gun, fuck this game, I hate it all.
It's not the game's fault you're bad.
Who the hell are you? I swear to God I locked my doors this time.
Not the windows!
Damn it! Anyway, what are you talking about?
Well, for starters, you can actually upgrade the Unmaker and collect the items needed to seal the teleporters for the final boss.
What in the... where?
In the secret levels. Duh.
What?!
Yeah, Just like every other Doom game that came before it, and even after it, there are secret levels to find at certain levels. In each of these secret levels, there is a demon key you can find, and of course going through myriads of monsters and challenges first. However though, these demon keys are still missable in the secret levels, as in each one you need to solve a puzzle to get access to it. So yes, even though you're in the level itself, it does not guarantee you a said key. Now luckily for you, you got a fox here to help you claim these keys and unmake those demons. Eh? I guess I wish I could unmake that joke. Now on map 04, holding area, this is where you can go to the first secret level, Outpost Omega. You can get to the secret exit by fighting the 4 switches on the gallery before the normal exit, and you have to press them in a certain order or else you'll mess it up and can't gain access anymore. Luckily for you, you can quick save in the Night Dive Remaster, but on the original version, you had a password system, and so if you mess it up, back to the start level you go. However, the right order is 3, 1, 2, 4. Then go through the teleport on the right door by the exit, run across the platforms, and bam! Secret level. In Outpost Omega, it plays like a challenging level. You'll eventually find a room that is yellow everywhere, and a demon key is visible, but you can't get to it just yet. Navigate the maze, shoot any switches to move the room around, and you can teleport back to the beginning luckily enough. Run back into the room with the Mancubuses, press the right panel on the door frame, and a niche should open up across the room, revealing the right key that is needed to open the door to your first demon key. Now onto map 30, the lair. It's quite a confusing map to be in, with many monsters, turns, mazes, and a cyber demon for your consideration. The demon key thankfully is quite easy to get, as it's right there, in the sky, and you just jump. Wait. Go through the level as normal, and once you defeat the cyber demon, enter the smaller room in the left relative to the entrance with the wood floor, and you hear a timed wall lower. Shoot that before it goes away, look to your left, and see through a smaller square window. Shoot that switch that reveals itself, and ta-da! The central pillar lowers itself for the demon key, all for you. Welcome to map 31, In the Void. And quite literally, you're in a green void full of monsters. Most notably, paint elementals hanging out there shooting out those flaming skulls. No one likes them. Anyways, the demon key here is a lesson in backtracking. After you hit the yellow key switch, just walk past the arc on the way to the exit. You'll see the screen shake because apparently there's earthquakes and voids. Out of all the things in Doom games, and the one that has me questioning is earthquakes and voids. Back to the demon key, there should be a switch here. Press it and run all the way back to the blue key. It will be risen a bit that will allow you to run to the tunnel and get the demon key. Oh, oops, did it disappear? And did I forget to mention that this entire section is timed? No? Because it is. And this is probably the most infuriating part of the secrets. After you got all 3, your Unmaker is considered fully upgraded and deletes any enemies in your path. Let your hatred flow through the weapon. Erase all demons. Oh, and also closes the 3 teleporters in the final level with the mother demon, making the fight itself literally a joke, allowing you to hit the gritty on her corpse.
Well, that was a lot. At least we're done now.
Oh, you don't know about Hectic? The super secret level in the bonus maps? Let me tell ya. Hectic is a super secret map that no one knew existed until it was published in a GamePro magazine, and you can only access it through the first level, via an extremely wonky and easily messed up barrel shooting process. But once you do that, welcome to Hectic, where you can all sorts of goodies if you beat the level, but you ignore the obvious traps of the armor and the soul spear. They'll instantly kill you. Trust me, it sucks. In each of these 3 rooms, there's a challenge in them. The right has you kill 2 Arachnotrons with a rocket launcher, but be careful, the roof crushes you if you're not in the right spot. The middle room is a dart room. Grab the yellow key and get out. It's actually quite easy. Now the hardest room is one to your left. You get a rocket launcher at the end of the walkway, but both sides open, revealing 4 Hell Knights. Once all that is done, you can exit and move on to level 2. You did it!
That was it? No hidden items like the others? Nothing?
Nope. Just a tough as balls level that was hidden really well.
Why? Why would you put me through all that?
We're not done.
Huh?
Open your menu, and you'll see a new option called Features. That gives you all the cheats in the game. Full ammo, invulnerability, all items, anything your heart desires. And oh look, a level select. Take a look through there. Oh, there are levels in here that are not part of the actual game. These are called the fun levels, each one involving a cyber demon fight and your pistol starting the level. I won't go into too much depth with these levels as they are all involved fighting the cyber demon. These maps were created as fun Easter eggs to be found as they can only be seen in the features menu. There is no way to get to them through any normal means. Now that I got you through all that, you ready to get back in there, Justin, and conquer hell? Yep, he's ready.
Okay, After completing the soul-crushing process of gathering up the demon keys, the Unmaker becomes the best gun in the game. Its fast fire rate, multiple projectiles, and damage output almost immediately eclipses anything else in the sandbox. But I don't think that the effort needed to get the fully upgraded Unmaker is worth it at all. And that is solely because of the way the puzzle segments are designed. The puzzles in this game are just as, if not more cryptic and confusing as the main games. Luckily for me, this time around, the developers were a bit more merciful when it came to spreading these puzzles out. Either that, or I've gotten slightly better at sniffing out the solutions to these damn riddles. To highlight this, and or my own stupidity, we're going to take a look at the first of many puzzles, which were so mind-boggling to me that I had to look up the solution online. And yes, you will lose all respect for me because of this. Level 8, Final Outpost. Which, by the way, its text makes it look like it says anal. I don't know, Anal Outpost. Only 8 levels into the game, and I was already stumped by a classic, borderline nonsensical Doom puzzle. In order to progress, you need to collect the yellow keycard at the center of the room. However, the card is sitting on top of an extended pillar. Walking inside to get a better grasp on the situation, you notice 2 different switches on either side of the room. One lowers the pillar, but also drops down a metal fence which keeps you from grabbing it. No big deal, the next button must raise the cage, and my assumption was kinda right. The metal gate did rise, but so did the pillar. Okay, that must mean it's timed. Slightly annoying, but it's far from the worst puzzle I've ever encountered in a Doom game. Looking at you, Doom 2 crate bullshit. So, I repeated the process, dropped the pillar, sprinted over to the next button as fast as I could, and nope, the same exact thing happened. At this point, I'm checked out. Unless they hid the switch on the other side of the map, the solution had to be in the room. So now, I'm just repeatedly mashing the 2 buttons, hoping that something will happen. But alas, nothing. So I do what we all do when we get stumped on the game. I looked up the solution on YouTube. I just want you to guess what the intended way to solve this puzzle is. Go ahead, I'll wait. As it turns out, the buttons inside the room itself were little more than red herrings. They literally serve 0 purpose. What you were supposed to do is walk into the hallway and turn until you see this panel texture, which is reused often, mind you, and click it, which, despite there not being any indication that it does anything at all, lowers the pillar, allowing you to pick it up. If there is anyone in the comments who tries to defend this, you definitely can, and I look forward to seeing what your argument may be, and perhaps I'll change my point of view. This issue, to varying degrees, permeates the entire experience. You'll never escape the game's intentionally ambiguous solutions. Sure, you may be able to figure these out on your own, but that's after an obnoxiously large amount of trial and error run-throughs. And as I stated in the first video in this retrospective, if a player feels completely lost, with no clear sense of direction or goal in mind, and the developers fail to properly communicate so much as vague hints towards the solution, where the actual means of progression is something so obscure and frustratingly specific that there is little to no chance of someone discovering them on their own. I wouldn't call that good design. Not every puzzle is quite as rage-inducing as level 8's yellow keycard, but I can still list off a few Switch puzzles that pissed me off to no end. Level 8, 17, 28, as you need to discover the hidden maps in order to stand a chance, and finally, the first hidden map itself, Omega Outpost. Although, much like its older brothers, Doom 64's fun, albeit unoriginal combat flow salvages the final product. Though I was a bit harsh on the gameplay structure at the beginning of this episode, I cannot deny, shooting things in the classic Doom games is still extremely satisfying. And combating the demons is intense and stressful in the best ways possible, where any death is obviously my own fault, and not because the game just expected me to click on this random goddamn tile in the hallway. With that, we've covered pretty much everything Doom 64 has to offer. There is an additional campaign in the 2020 remaster called The Lost Levels, which helps bridge the gap between this game and the 2016 reboot. But for the most part, it doesn't offer up anything new, and is simply another set of maps for you to rampage through, with all the positives and negatives from the base game remaining. The tremendously horrifying art design and claustrophobic environments, twisted, distorted sounds playing in your ear whilst you walk through the halls, with your finger on the trigger at all times. Competent, though stale combat which never fails to stimulate, and all of this put onto a little gray cartridge for a system known for Super Mario 64. The fact that this game exists is stunning in and of itself. It was developed by a team with little to no direct involvement with any Doom project before this, with the original developers acting as little more than supervisors as they worked on their own in-house projects, hitting just about every development roadblock in the book thanks to the lacking power of the hardware and Midway's ambitions, unfortunately resulting in quite a few concepts left behind on the cutting room floor. There is actually concept art for two wholly original monsters, the Hellhound, which did eventually make an appearance in the often forgotten Doom mobile phone RPGs, which is more than I can say for the other one, but despite it all, Doom 64 is the most enjoyable, except these, experience I've had with classic Doom. Shocking, I know, because I came away with quite a positive impression of the prior entries. Take one look at the title for Doom 2's review, and it says all you need to know. Even so, Doom 64 was the most memorable time I had with any of these games. It played on my familiarity with the first two games in ways I would have never seen coming, and though it does have all the same flaws that the others also have, that doesn't make it bad. We should be able to take a look back at any video game and acknowledge that more often than not, they are full to the brim with issues at the core of its experience, whilst also appreciating it for the many positives and strides in game design it pushed forward. That was my thesis when taking a look back at Doom 1 all that time ago. And after finishing the classic Doom series, I can tell you firsthand that these are not perfect games, but despite it all, their impact on the gaming industry was tremendous, and no matter what I may say against them, that will always be true. But these games, including Doom 64, are still classics that deserve to be played by anyone who's a fan of first-person shooters. Well, thanks for dropping by and telling me about the secret levels, you actual home invader. Do you have anything else you'd like to add before I call the police?
Oh, thanks for asking. Well, you can follow me at twitter.com/RobinBernard, or follow me on Twitch, where I live stream almost every day at twitch.tv/RobinBernard. I mostly stream fighting games and boomer shooters, like Doom 64, but, you know, hopefully you can come by and say hello. You're still calling the police, aren't you?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'll go through the front door this time.
I'm buying a gun. Before I let you go, there actually is a bit more classic Doom I initially skimmed over. Let's rewind a bit. Expansion packs for both main entries hit the shelves soon after. Doom 1, as we've discussed, was an unbelievable success, which of course led to the creation of Doom 2, where they promptly blew their load again and casually dropped another worldwide phenomenon. But weirdly enough, they actually went back and released a new version of the first game. On April 30th, 1995, the world was blessed with Ultimate Doom. This version of the game was notable for a few reasons. For instance, Ultimate Doom was actually the very first time the complete non-shareware version of the game was made available at local retailers, alongside various patches for the game, of course. Yes, games could be patched back during the days of the almighty floppy. And a brand new, complete 9-level episode to the classic that started it all, Thy Flesh Consumed. Thy Flesh Consumed was developed by much the same talent that gave us the original game, joined this time around by some prominent members of the modding community. And it's more Doom. Yeah, I know that's not exactly the most enlightening commentary, but it is what it is. It's the same exquisite weapons, level textures, and the very same roster of demons from the first game, which actually surprised me a bit considering that this release came after Doom 2. At its core, Thy Flesh Consumed is just more monster-killing goodness, meant for utter masochists. Yeah, drop the skill issue comments now, because my god, these levels were fucking difficult. The first two levels, you'll spend most of it memorizing demon spawns and praying you don't miss too many shots because you'll quickly run out of ammo. I don't care how much you can bench, bro, try and fight a baron with your bare fists, and you will lose. Granted, they are doable after 1, 2, 3, literally 10 retries in my case, but all of them are like this, to varying degrees, sure. For example, level 1 funnels in the enemies within a relatively small space, helping the player respond accordingly. Mission 3? Granted, the difficulty was likely intended. I see this expansion as a final trial of sorts for those who've mastered Doom 1. Which is not me, for God's... Doom 2 received an expansion of its own in the same year, 1995, dubbed the Master Levels. The expansion was an absolutely huge map pack bundle, containing 21 levels developed by 5 of the more skilled mappers from the community, with one author usually getting 3 or 4 of their levels into the pack. That is a lot of Doom action. And we almost had more on top of this, by the way. Roughly 16 additional stages were submitted to id Software and rejected for one reason or another. And while I could go in depth and give my detailed account on the expansion as a whole, I actually feel like the story surrounding the master levels is far more interesting than the maps themselves. Now, I'm not trying to belittle the master levels' overall quality. From my experiences, these levels were just as good as the levels developed by id Software. I am just not the right man for the job. For God's sake, the majority of my praise for the main games can be summarized as shooting the monster feels good. id Software's primary reason for developing this collection was spite. You see, there was a bit of a problem at the time. Third-party companies had been compiling Doom wads from the internet and selling them at retail, usually without asking for permission from the original creators, and lacking any sort of quality control, leading to the inclusion of many poor, and in a few cases, some outright broken levels in their compilations. Not a good look for companies like D-Zone, and especially id Software themselves. Fed up with this, id pretty much said, screw it, I'll do it myself, and contracted many talented individuals from the community to license their work for the master levels, with the caveat that the submitted levels had not been published before, finally giving retail customers some well-designed additional content to blast through. We aren't quite done with Doom 2. Although not made by id Software, Doom 2 received one more expansion developed by the same people in charge of the 2010 Xbox Live Arcade version of the game, Nerve Software. Paying homage to the original game's level format, No Rest for the Living is a 9-level campaign taking the Doom guy through a pocket dimension in order to put another cyber demon into the ground. No, I'm serious, that's the plot according to the wiki. This expansion was also included with the BFG edition of Doom 3, but funnily enough, it's nowhere to be seen with the modern versions on Steam and Xbox Game Pass. I don't even have so much as an inkling of an idea as to why it was excluded. It's just weird. Future Justin here, it is actually included with the modern ports. You just have to go out of your way to download it via the add-on screen on the main menu, which is a pretty cool addition admittedly, making some mods easier to access for console users, and, perhaps I'll go over that another day. It's still weird though, because No Rest for the Living was an official product! And that's pretty much where the interesting tidbits stop. Once again, this is more classic Doom 2. Boom, pow, ow, go eat broken shards of glass, you piece of shit. Yeah, it's fun, but it's nothing all that remarkable. There did seem to be a bit more enemies towards the latter half of the experience, but at the same time, Doom 2's main feature was the inclusion of more demons on screen at once, so maybe I'm just driven. It's certainly not a bad time, it's just rather unremarkable. I also could be suffering from classic Doom burnout. That is a very realistic possibility. Taking cues from Nerve Software, the often underappreciated Doom 64 received a few new levels 23 years later, developed by the team in charge of the most recent release of the game, Night Dive, titled The Lost Levels. Even though they are certainly not lost, this is like the goddamn SpongeBob episode all over again.
That's the lost episode?
These extra levels were meant to help further solidify Doom 64's connection to the 2016 reboot of the franchise. More specifically, Doom Eternal, as that game held a much larger emphasis on the plot, and this re-release was only made to be included as a pre-order bonus for Eternal. Doom Eternal is actually my favorite game in the series as of now, so when I found out about this bridge between the classic and modern Doom games, I was actually incredibly excited. and that excitement faded the second I actually started to play the lost levels. This was one of the most disappointing gaming experiences I've had in recent memories, not even because it was bad. It was just okay. Most of which is entirely my own fault. In retrospect, I'm not exactly sure what I had in mind when I heard that this port had some new levels, but it was more than this, man, come on. Story-wise, it's the simplest it's ever been. Turns out, the mother demon we killed at the end of Doom 64 had a sister who's still resurrecting more demons. She boots the Doom guy out from hell, and we immediately dive back in and murder our way through another section of hell, killing the sister, and then once again deciding to stay in hell to ensure that humanity remains safe. This DLC is the definition of a filler episode. Believe it! And it was probably only included to tempt more people into buying a rather obscure Doom game. But literally nothing new was added to the lore that affected it in any significant way. And anything it does add can be inferred from the Doom guy's appearance in Doom Eternal. So story-wise, it's a bust, but how's the gameplay? I mean, it's Doom 64, so, you know, as usual, it's a decent enough time, but that's about it. I wasn't really all that happy with this. Just like how Bob the Builder wasn't happy when he was removed for the murder of his business partner, Paul the patronizing partner. Classic Doom's impact on the industry cannot be understated. It's the ember that helped establish first-person shooters as one of the most recognizable genres out there. And the series itself is still critically and financially successful all these years later. As a matter of fact, I only entered the series through the later entries. It was my enjoyment of those titles which prompted me to head back through the series' history. And though I had my fair share of grievances with the older games, I also had a blast. Found new ways to appreciate the things I love about gaming as a whole. And if you've stuck around to the conclusion of this overly long video, hopefully I've managed to convey that. Doom 1, 2, and 64 are fantastic games that I urge any fan of first-person shooters to try out for themselves. Thank you all for watching. Now, we are done covering classic Doom for at least a little while. I may come back and do another video discussing some of the more prominent mods released for the game, but I'm ready to move on for a little bit. However, we will come back to Doom as a whole soon enough, as I fully intend on covering the modern games, starting with Doom 3. Which came out in 2004, so I guess it's not quite modern anymore, but still, I hope you guys will stick along for the ride. But if you don't, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you around. Peace.